Bitcoin is absolutely looking cooked, and I just wanted to give you guys a time sensitive update of what I think is going on, how low I think Bitcoin is going, and just some altcoins that I've kind of been scooping up and looking at, while this whole sort of situation kind of plans out. So, obviously, we have Bitcoin going around $85,000 at the time of this recording. We have, Nvidia kind of just like rallied super crazy, then it crashed like even lower than it was yesterday. We have a lot of uncertainty when it comes to these whole Fed interest rate cuts. We have fears of the whole reverse or yen carry trade, which basically means that Japan was basically borrowing at 0% interest, and they were basically buying all of the stocks and all that kind of stuff in the US market to make money. And now, since they're simulating basically to levels not seen since like COVID, there's a lot of speculation that the Japanese yen is going to they're going to have to start increasing their interest rates, right? And so what happens with that is they need to obviously get out of whatever speculation that they've been in, because if they've been borrowing at 0% interest rates and now you have an increased interest rate, that's not good. And so all this is kind of going on while we have like mass uncertainty when it comes to the markets. The Fed has, in my opinion, no idea kind of like what they're doing, like what their plan is, because they just have like no data. And you can make the argument that it's very political. Like obviously they're not really hesitant to cut or do anything or kind of listen to what the administration wants. And I think that if you just kind of like take a look around, like everyone is hurting. I think that the economy has never been worse. I think that this whole sort of cycle is kind of just like unwinding itself because banks don't have money. We have very low liquidity, credit card debts at all-time high. We have delinquencies. We have like the car repossession markets like skyrocketing. People aren't paying for their cars. And, obviously Bitcoin is kind of like a suction cup when it comes to liquidity, and it kind of front runs most of the moves. So you'll notice that Bitcoin tends to sell off before the stock market does. And then it also tends to lead the rally first before the stock market kind of catches a bid. And so, I do think that there's a cause for concern, because I also think that there is a massive liquidation event, obviously on the 10th of October. But I think more importantly, there's probably some large firms that probably just lost everything. And maybe they're kind of like rebalancing their balance sheet, or maybe they're kind of doing some kind of, I don't know, maybe they're just getting liquidated, or maybe they're getting bought out by like other entities so that they don't have to disclose what's going on. You just never really know with these things, right? And it's just very uncertain, right? I understand like the frustration going on in the markets. Everybody has their opinions, but nobody knows exactly what's going on. We can just kind of speculate. And this is neither here nor there, but everyone's also talking about like Michael Saylor. He has like a price average of like $75,000. So like they're trying to go down to that level to liquidate him. But that's just like not even relevant, because the way that he's structured all of his debt and all that kind of stuff, like I don't think he has to sell for like the next 4 to 5 years, something like crazy. And I think his liquidation price, if at all, is like $10,000 Bitcoin. So something catastrophic would have to happen in order for, I think, that to kind of be the case. So basically, obviously I've been watching the Bitcoin price. It sucks. I personally bought some Bitcoin, Solana, and Hyperliquid today. Felt disgusting doing it, borderline nauseous, but usually that's like not a decent time to start buying. My strategy has always been, take profits as you start multiplying your return on investment with whatever you're buying. And then whenever things go down around 25, 30%, I always add to the position regardless. And then I try to double like whatever I previously bought. So like if it goes down like another 20 or 25%, whatever, then I try to layer in more. And that's kind of how I sort of handle my dollar cost averaging, because when the prices really go up, I'm not really buying anything. I'm usually just trying to take profits or hedging with like, low leverage positions, or I'm just like kind of trading the market just to kind of like have something to do, right? I'm not saying you guys should do that by any means. Like this is not financial advice. This is kind of just me like at this point, just kind of rambling and just giving my sort of thoughts and like strategy, because I know that a lot of people here are probably new to the channel or just new to crypto, and maybe this is your first 4-year cycle. You haven't really experienced this. And I understand that a lot of people are just very confused, because usually what happens is around the 4th year of every 4-year cycle, this is my 3rd, by the way, so I've made a lot of mistakes along the way. And the most common mistake I see people make is they usually get in at a very late time. And so what happens is they buy considerably high, then they get kind of like wrapped up in their emotions. They're like, okay, well, this is like a scam, or like this wasn't worth it, so I'm gonna sell. So they sell their crypto. Um, they kind of just like wash their hands, it's over. And then you see the price kind of reverse because no matter what, even if we're like in a bear cycle, there's always some sort of lower high that gets put in. So basically it usually looks like a violent bounce up where it looks like, oh, we're so back, like all-time highs. You get all the, all the bullish people coming out, changing their tones and all that kind of stuff. And so usually what happens is people will sell their bag like low and then they'll start buying back higher thinking like, oh, I shouldn't have sold, like it's going to go higher. And so you end up buying higher and then it goes down another 20 or 30%. And like that kind of just like rinse and repeats a few times. Usually what happens in these 4-year cycles is you tend to get at least 2 to 3, like 25 to about 35% drops. So it's not uncommon, but people just they get caught up in narratives and they get really panicked when it comes to their investments because obviously when it's your money, you're very emotional and the market really does rely on psychology of its investors and obviously it's like personal finances, right? So like it's a very personal decision that people make. And so basically the way that I think this is going to play out is I do think that there are some more shoes to drop when it comes to just like insolvencies. And obviously we have a lot of uncertainty, as I mentioned, with like the whole like Japanese economy and how that's going to implicate the stock market, because obviously like Nvidia kind of propped everything up yesterday, in my opinion, and they kind of just sold off. And you can make the case, whatever you want to think about that. But it's important. Not to mention like the housing market's not great. We have debt, as I said. And so I think that these things are going to take probably a few like weeks or months to kind of resolve, at least in order for us to put in some sort of bounce. Now, obviously we can bounce at any point because crypto is heavily manipulated by certain market makers. I'll let you guys guess who those market makers and big like exchanges are, but they typically will take up like 90% of the market share. And so they can move the crypto whatever direction they want, really. And so when you have all these built up people that are opening shorts, they have to pay these people out if they actually win their positions. And so just like people liquidate the longs, it would make sense at some point for them to at least liquidate some shorts so that they don't have to cover so much costs. And then maybe we can talk about if we're going to go higher, if we're going to go back down and put in lower lows and continue this bear trend that we've been on. But my suspicion is that I think that we're still going to have some sort of bullish outlook, maybe if it's in Q4, but maybe it could be in next year, like once we start going into quantitative easing, once we have like a easier like liquidity kind of flowing into the markets, once Jerome Powell is kind of out of his position. I think that happens sometime in like May. I don't think we're going to go on until May, though. I think that it's possible for us to kind of turn around like in the next like month or so and then kind of rally into like New Year's end and then have maybe like a bullish Q1. And then maybe we'll talk about like some sort of like recessionary kind of period that we go through. That's just kind of like my take right now. So again, I'm kind of buying right now. I'm kind of just, preparing for that stuff to go lower, obviously. And I think that once these issues kind of resolve, I think that we're going to be better off. I think that there's a lot of just like junk that's kind of been propping up the system. I think that people are sick of the, basically what's been going on around the world. And crypto's just not going to benefit. Bitcoin's not going to move either until like all this kind of stuff is resolved and we see obviously some better regulation for like clarity so that there's not so much blatant market manipulation, in my opinion, and just a better like framework so that people can actually come in and start building and maybe, integrating with Bitcoin and crypto a little bit better, because I think that a lot of these people just kind of ride the hype. And so that's why you've seen a lot of these ETF people that are just kind of like selling their bags and, everyone's just kind of exiting their positions. So I'm not particularly worried. I'm going to wrap this up with saying that, this is not anything we haven't seen dozens of times. It does absolutely suck. It feels horrible. I don't even want to look at my portfolio. This is a good reason why I always tell people you should always consider taking out your initial profits and just like taking something off the table so that at the very minimum, you can always like dollar cost average and buy back in, because it feels bad when you cannot buy and prices are a lot lower. But it feels even worse when you just see your net worth just drop in like, chunks and chunks and chunks. So anyway, if you guys have any questions or comments or suggestions of what kind of, crypto content, or even if it's like financial based, I've been in the financial markets since 2016. So I've also like messed with some stocks, like trading, all that kind of stuff. Any topics you guys want me to cover, happy to do that. Just let me know. And as always, make sure you subscribe, turn on bell notifications, and trade safe, guys. I'll see y'all soon. Bye.